In December 1944, as snow blanketed the vast Ardennes forest, the world witnessed the beginning of Hitler's last desperate gamble. It was called the Ardennes counteroffensive, but history remembers it by another name, the Battle of the Bulge. The frozen silence of that forest shattered when German armor and infantry, numbering more than 200,000, surged forward under the cover of fog and snow. The Allied front lines were stretched thin, and in the chaos, the Germans achieved total surprise. Town after town fell to the advancing enemy, and panic rippled through the American ranks. In the heart of that chaos, a unit known for its bravery was called to action, the 101st Airborne Division, the Screaming Eagles. They had fought through Normandy and Holland, and now they were ordered to hold a small, critical Belgian town called Bastogne. Bastogne was not just another dot on the map. It was a vital road junction, a crossroads that controlled access to the interior of Belgium and the lifeline of the Allied advance. Whoever held Bastogne held the key to the campaign. The paratroopers arrived exhausted, with little ammunition, no winter clothing, and almost no time to prepare. Snow fell thick and unending, the temperature plunged far below freezing. Trucks and jeeps froze in place, their breath turned to ice as they dug foxholes into the frozen soil, the steel of their shovels ringing like bells in the cold. Supplies were scarce, food was limited, and medical aid was nearly non-existent. Every man knew the odds were against them, yet not one turned away. By December 20th, Bastogne was completely surrounded. 7 German divisions encircled the town, every road was cut off. The 101st Airborne Division, along with a few tank destroyer units and remnants of other commands, were trapped. But instead of despair, there was resolve. Messages from higher command offered no guarantees of rescue, only the order to hold, and so they held. Inside that ring of ice and steel, the soldiers huddled together, their rifles frozen to their gloves, their rations running low. The sound of distant artillery became a grim lullaby in the endless snow. Yet in those dark, frigid nights, the spirit of the defenders refused to break. Bastogne had become a fortress of courage, a frozen beacon of defiance against overwhelming odds. By December 22, 1944, the siege of Bastogne had reached its most desperate hour. Snowstorms had grounded Allied aircraft, preventing resupply or air support. Ammunition was running dangerously low. The wounded filled makeshift aid stations in basements, wrapped in tattered blankets, their breath visible in the freezing air. The Germans tightened their grip each day, pressing with tanks, artillery, and endless infantry assaults. To the men of the 101st Airborne Division, it felt as though the entire German army was bearing down upon them. Then, through the smoke and snow, came an unexpected sight. A small German delegation approached the American lines under a white flag of truce. They were escorted through to the headquarters of the acting commander, Brigadier General Anthony Clement McAuliffe, an artillery officer who had taken command when General Maxwell Taylor was away in Washington. McAuliffe, weary but calm, was handed a formal message from the German commander. It was an ultimatum. The message was cold and precise, a demand for the honorable surrender of Bastogne within 2 hours. It warned that if the Americans refused, the town and its defenders would be annihilated by artillery and air bombardment. The German commander assured that if they surrendered, their men would be treated humanely as prisoners of war. McAuliffe read the message aloud to his staff. The men stared at each other in disbelief. After a moment of silence, McAuliffe muttered the word that would change history, nuts. His staff burst into laughter. The word captured everything about the spirit of Bastogne. Frustration, defiance, and unshakable courage rolled into one. When the time came to send the official reply, the staff decided that no other word could better express their resolve. McAuliffe dictated a single-word response, typed neatly on a sheet of paper, to the German commander, nuts, the American commander. When the German officers received the reply, they were confused. One of them asked what nuts meant. The American officer delivering the message smiled and said, in plain English, it means go to hell. That single word traveled through the trenches like wildfire. Tired men in frozen foxholes laughed, cheered, and felt their morale lift. The word nuts became a rallying cry, a symbol of defiance that spread beyond Bastogne to the entire Allied front. Even surrounded, starving, and outnumbered, the 101st Airborne refused to yield. As night fell over the snow-covered town, the Germans resumed their bombardment, but something had changed. The defenders were no longer merely holding on, they were standing as a wall of resistance. The spirit of Bastogne had been defined by one word, and it would echo across the decades as a testament to courage. The siege tightened with every passing day. Bastogne became a small island of resistance in a sea of German armor and artillery. The men of the 101st Airborne Division endured relentless bombardment. Shells screamed through the frozen air, shattering trees and tearing apart what little shelter the men could find. The snow, once white, turned black with soot and red with blood. Yet the paratroopers refused to abandon their positions. They were fighting not only for Bastogne, but for every Allied soldier counting on that crossroads to remain in American hands. Conditions were brutal, the cold was merciless, with temperatures dropping far below freezing. Frostbite spread through the ranks, medics worked tirelessly in dark, unheated basements that doubled as field hospitals. They performed amputations without anesthesia, using kitchen knives sterilized with whiskey. The cries of the wounded mingled with the constant rumble of artillery. Supplies were almost gone. Men shared crumbs of chocolate, sipped melted snow for water, and rationed their last rounds of ammunition. Still, the defense held firm. The roads leading into Bastogne became death traps for German tanks. Every field, every hedgerow, every street corner was contested. The paratroopers dug in deeper, setting up machine guns behind piles of rubble, firing until their barrels steamed in the icy wind. When ammunition ran out, they fought with grenades, rifles, and even captured German weapons. The town civilians huddled in basements, praying for the shelling to stop, often sharing their last scraps of food with the soldiers protecting them. Through it all, McAuliffe's one-word reply, "nuts," continued to echo like a battle cry. It was scrawled on walls, whispered in foxholes, and repeated whenever morale began to waver. That defined word became the spirit of Bastogne itself, a refusal to surrender, no matter the odds. When at last the skies cleared on December 23rd, the distant drone of engines brought hope. Allied C-47 planes appeared through the clouds, dropping parachutes loaded with ammunition, food, and medical supplies. Cheers erupted from the defenders. For the first time in days, they felt a glimmer of relief, yet the battle was far from over. The Germans attacked again and again, determined to crush Bastogne before help could arrive. But each time they struck, the defenders pushed them back. The Battle of Bastogne was more than a struggle for a town. It was a testament to endurance, discipline, and unity under fire. Every man who fought there became a part of a legend, a frozen monument to the unyielding spirit of those who chose courage over surrender, defiance over fear. On the morning of December 26, 1944, the silence of the snow-covered Ardennes was broken by the rumble of engines. From the south came the sound of tanks, the unmistakable growl of Sherman engines echoing through the forest. The men of the 101st Airborne Division held their breath as they peered through the smoke and frost. Then, out of the haze, came the tanks of General George S. Patton's Third Army. The relief column had broken through the German lines and reached Bastogne at last. Cheers erupted across the battered town. Soldiers who had not smiled in days shouted and waved, their frost-bitten faces lighting up with joy. The siege of Bastogne was over. For days, Patton's troops had fought through snow, ice, and relentless German resistance to reach the trapped garrison. His men pushed north with one mission: to relieve Bastogne. The success of that mission marked a turning point in the Battle of the Bulge. Hitler's offensive, once so fierce and swift, began to collapse. The German forces were exhausted, their tanks out of fuel, their troops weakened by the same brutal winter that had punished the Americans. What had begun as a surprise assault now turned into a desperate retreat. The defense of Bastogne became one of the defining moments of World War II. The courage and tenacity of the 101st Airborne Division and their supporting units captured the imagination of the world. Newspapers called them the battered bastards of Bastogne, and their stand became a symbol of American resilience. McAuliffe's legendary one-word reply, "Nuts," entered military history as a perfect expression of defiance in the face of impossible odds. When General Eisenhower heard of McAuliffe's response, he reportedly smiled and said it was the best answer of the war. Even decades later, the story of Bastogne continues to inspire soldiers, leaders, and ordinary people who face adversity. It stands as proof that leadership and morale can turn the tide even in the darkest moments. The Battle of the Bulge would rage on into January 1945, but the German army would never recover from its losses in men and machines. The failure of that final offensive marked the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany. For the men of Bastogne, it was not victory alone that mattered. It was the pride of having stood their ground when everything seemed lost. The legacy of Bastogne lives on in museums, memorials, and the memories of those who fought there. The word nuts is carved in stone in Bastogne, a simple reminder of courage under fire. It represents the moment when ordinary soldiers, cold and weary, faced down one of the mightiest armies in history and refused to yield. That single word, shouted in defiance amid the snow and fire, became more than a message. It became a symbol of what makes freedom worth defending. Even today, the spirit of Bastogne reminds the world that true strength does not come from numbers or weapons, but from the will to stand firm when all hope seems lost.